How's everyone doing today? Welcome into the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Manny Maradiege, coming to you again with another round of stories and topics to talk about on today's episode. On today's episode, I'm going to be covering what Sean McDermott said in terms of measuring success for the Buffalo Bills over these last few years. Later on in the show, I'm going to give you guys my very own tier list of the best free agent moves and teams that have been going on throughout this offseason. I have 4 tiers for you guys, and I'm going to rank some of the teams that fall into those tiers, as well as telling you guys every story, tidbit, and kind of quotes that have been coming out of the NFL coaches meeting thus far over these last 2 days now officially. All of that and more coming on today's episode. Remember always to like and follow the show, as well as subscribing to both YouTube channels. And before I get into the first topic, I want to remind you guys again, if you have any questions or comments for me during this live show, to use the tip and donations link running across the ticker below me to be able to see the question over here to my right. I'm able to see it if you use the link at gsmcpodcast.net. Makes it easier for me to interact with you guys. It makes it more fun for me. And it's a big help for the show and all of the shows across the network as well if you guys are able to do that. Now, talking like I mentioned before on one of the topics, Sean McDermott and the Buffalo Bills, a common topic I think for the Buffalo Bills and Sean McDermott. Ever since he got there, he became the head coach in 2017. And this era didn't officially really start until Josh Allen got there in 2018. And then this sort of whole project and the way the Bills have been able to become this powerhouse team in the AFC, I don't think it's too crazy to say that now because of how they've performed consistently in the division and in the conference. And to some people, it might seem like, that's impressive. That's really well what they've done from the time that McDermott got there and what that level of quality of team that was to where they are now and how everyone views him now with Josh Allen, how he's arguably a top 3 to 5 quarterback in the NFL. That whole process has been very demanding, has been put in a lot of hard work by Sean McDermott and this team. And props go out to them for being able to construct this team to where it is now. That's one side of it. On the other side of it, you have people that would still criticize this team for falling below expectations. And, that comes with it, right? Everyone loves seeing the underdogs perform well. But then once you start performing really well, get better each and every year like Josh Allen has, like the Bills have been able to build up this roster, it turns on you, right? It becomes almost unfair, if you want to call it. You start becoming really, really good, and all of these fans and people that wanted to see you win now become your biggest critics, start to turn on you a little bit, and the hate starts to become a little louder from people that say, yeah, this team is good, it's performing well in the regular season, but what have they done in the playoffs? Where is that level? Why does that level drop off? And why doesn't it seem like they can get past Pat Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs every time they play them? Those, in all fairness, are fair questions when you get down to, the bottom line of it all. The playoffs are what matter. A lot of times it's what great quarterbacks, the best of the best, are judged on. And like I mentioned, where this Buffalo Bills team has come from, they've won the AFC East the last 4 years. They've only made the divisional round the last 3 years. And to that and all the naysayers and critics that have been out there recently about the Bills and Josh Allen, really, in this whole Josh Allen era, Sean McDermott went out into the media and answered some of these questions, to which he said, to say we haven't had success or Josh hasn't had success, I think would be kind of narrow-minded. It's hard to win in the NFL, so you kind of regroup every year and you make it one game at a time. That is, what you'd expect from Sean McDermott to say. Narrow-minded, I think. I wouldn't have said that, but it is fair to kind of categorize it in that way because of that is sort of the aspect and the landscape we find ourselves in now. Great players are validated, are judged on winning championships. That's what validates a career. That's what validates a good player. And where people, quarterbacks, NBA players, and all of that stuff, where you see it a lot more, that's where they fall in line in these rankings. Who has more championships? That's the first thing people look to. And it is a valid point to make. But when you're looking at the Buffalo Bills and you're seeing how good they are, I think it's important to determine what we're talking about and what we deem is success. What aspect of the game, of the season, are we talking about? Is success measured on where this Buffalo team has come from and where they are now? In that case, if you're just talking about the journey and how they've made and revolutionized this team into what it is now, a good team, an established team, I think it has been way more than successful. I think it has exceeded expectations. When Josh Allen was drafted, a lot of people didn't really see him as anywhere near where he can be now. He's an awesome quarterback now, like I mentioned, top 3 or top 5. And if we're talking about just that, their journey, the process of establishing this team, like I mentioned, I think it is very successful. But obviously the Bills want to win Super Bowls. Sean McDermott reiterates every time that that's the ultimate goal that they want to get there. It's not like they're not trying to get there. Obviously, that's the final goal, like it is with everybody. But it is a long process, and I think a lot of people, which is what he's trying to say, lose the idea that it's never really the same team, like he mentioned in his quote. You lose players. They lost a ton of players this year, and it was a struggle last year. They actually fired Ken Dorsey, their offensive coordinator, midway through the season, and it sparked them and made them win out most of their last few games in the regular season. They beat the Dolphins twice, I think, towards the end of the season, that won the division, and they were able to sneak in that way, which is great. But it seemed to me like last year the team was sort of teetering. They were at this breaking point where where the pressure was gonna make diamonds for them, or it was just gonna blow up and everything was gonna fall apart for them. It turned out very positively for them, but now you kind of see the fallout of it, and it seems like that was their last, real go at it, because they lost Jordan Poyer, Gabe Davis moved on, and on top of that, they released Tre'Davious White as well. So offensively, they were decent. Josh Allen makes them that much better, makes them really good. But defensively, it was sort of their identity that a lot of people weren't really talking about. And it carried them into these tight games, kept them in games a lot of times against the Kansas City Chiefs team, a lot of the times with Poyer, Tre'Davious White, and all these playmakers that they had. Now that they're losing them, I think a lot of people aren't really talking about how significant that's going to be for this team. And talking about success and how you measure it, if you want to measure it, like I mentioned before, in terms of just where this team has been and where it is now, again, it is successful. But if you're talking about Super Bowls and winning them and competing with the Patrick Mahomeses, the Baltimore Ravens, the San Francisco 49ers, they're all judged, maybe not so much the Ravens, because Lamar hasn't really done that well, that much better than Josh Allen really in the playoffs. So I won't give you that one, the Baltimore Ravens. But the 49ers, the Chiefs especially, these teams are now judged on, Super Bowls. The 49ers are one of the most established teams in the NFL, one of the leaders in terms of Super Bowls. So they've earned that pedigree, that legacy, that standard that people hold them to now. That's all based on Super Bowls and that legacy. Now with Patrick Mahomes as well, he's on a whole different trajectory on GOAT status, competing with Tom Brady, because he's winning Super Bowls, he's winning these championships, these accolades, and that is a different category, I think, on judging success. If you want to judge it, like I mentioned, on the process, that's where the Bills are successful. But in terms of Super Bowls and fitting this criteria that a lot of people measure careers and trajectories and how good a player is, I don't think they have been that successful. Unfortunately, that's how it is now. Is it unfair? It could be. But at the same time, how else? You can't devalue the fact that teams that win more Super Bowls should get more praise because that's the ultimate goal. That's the hardest thing to do. And if one team, one player has more than another, you have to look at that one player with more Super Bowls as higher or better because they were able to reach the mountaintop over and over again. So you have to really determine and clarify what we're talking about here, where success is measured. And that just brings me also, before I wrap up this segment, to the topic of most accomplished quarterback or most accomplished player and most talented. I think you could swing this conversation in that direction because a lot of people will say Tom Brady's the GOAT. And some people will say he's the most accomplished. He's won the most Super Bowls, has the most accomplished career. While others say the most talented is now Patrick Mahomes. Aaron Rodgers has been thrown in there. You could split it up like that into those categories, and comparing Josh to these other quarterbacks, I think Josh, when comparing him to Patrick Mahomes or these other quarterbacks that might have more Super Bowls than him, you can say he's a better talent, he's a better player of football at the quarterback spot, but holding the trophies, the accolades over his head, a lot of times will swing people in that favor of the one with more success and Super Bowls. It is unfortunate how it is now, and with everything really being statistical and there's a stat for everything and there's information on anything, that's really the thing that people go back to more and more often than not, and it's where the Bills stand right now. They're still good. It's not saying that they can't ever win a Super Bowl, but with the team that they had overall, I think the final thing to take away from this is that Sean McDermott and the Bills are trying to make that next step, and regardless if people think they're successful or not, I don't think that's really what matters here because they're judging the past and what you have done. If they win the next two out of the next three Super Bowls, this whole conversation is really irrelevant, and people won't remember any of these things that they've said badly about the Bills. But now it becomes more of a challenge, like I mentioned, because they've lost so many people. They have to try and change their identity, I think, really. But as long as they have Josh Allen, they have a really legitimate chance of getting there and at least getting these chances over and over again, because a lot of teams, a lot of organizations don't have that luxury of having a top quarterback, very talented, game-changing quarterback to have all these opportunities. I think the Bills are definitely not taking it for granted, and you're seeing it now when people ask Sean McDermott these questions, how it could get annoying because they keep trying and falling short, and you can understand why he feels that people aren't valuing getting there, how hard it is, but at the end of the day, that's how it is measured right now, and probably how it's always going to get measured because of how important the Super Bowl and winning championships is in sports, not just football, but in other sports as well. So that's interesting. I thought the comments were very interesting from Sean McDermott, but you can make good points on either side of the argument, and nothing really matters until the Bills go out there and prove people wrong, and these comments are still just going to be there for Sean McDermott to entertain us with some of his answers. But that's where I'll leave that topic and the Buffalo Bills. I have a lot more to get into in today's show, but before I do that, I'm going to send it into the first break, and on the other side, I'm going to bring you guys my tier list of the best teams, in my opinion, that have just hit a home run this offseason, and some teams that have fallen short and gotten worse this offseason, plus what's coming out of the NFL coaches meeting and the new kickoff rule as well that was just released here today at the NFL coaches meeting as well. So a lot more stories, a lot more topics to get into on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast.